This is Jay Teaches Reading for All, Lesson 30, which is on ending blends. And we're going to review words in the last two lessons. Whoops. I want to go back to the last two lessons. Let's get lessons 29 and 28 on the screen. I think we're pretty close to being ready now. All right, students, say these words before I do. Cats, cats. Jeffs, Jeffs. And now I'm not going to sound these out, but continue, students, to say these words. Vicks, cops, cups, dads, Ben's, Kim's, Mom's, Bugs. Okay, teachers that have been with me since the beginning of the course or for many lessons, you already know how to help students sound out these words from left to right. For example, cats, k-at-s. Or even going into more depth, having the student print and say the word, and they can look at the word, but just having them print it out and then saying it, you may have to help them with the individual sounds of the letters from left to right. That really solidifies the decoding of the word for the student. So it can sometimes be a helpful tool to use. We are possibly having some new teachers on board with Lesson 30 because Lesson 30 is a lesson on blends. And sometimes students have difficulty with blends. So teachers who have taken a student who can read but may have some difficulties in certain skill areas, through the Part 1 video and have found out that their student does have trouble with blends, they may have just started this course. Now, I haven't even done that Part 1 video at this point, and I won't do it until I've finished Part 2 and the 100 lessons in Part 2. But the Part 1 video is a diagnostic video, and it shows the teacher where the student needs to begin in Part 2, or maybe just particular lessons the student needs to learn a skill that they have not previously learned. Okay, so if you're new, and especially if you have very little knowledge of how to teach reading and how to decode words phonetically, then you need to go back to Lesson 25, which is the last lesson of the alphabet, the letter Z, and make sure you know all the sounds of the letters of the alphabet. The vowels would be the short vowel sounds at that point. And just watch me as I sound out words from left to right for the students, using that left to right technique so that you can pick up on that and use it with your students. So all of that being said, teachers, I'd like you now to press pause and have the students say these words to you. Now we're going to go to lesson 29 words. And lesson 29 words are words that end in apostrophe S or ES and can sound alike. And I forgot to mention that in the previous lesson that we had words that ended obviously with apostrophe S. That apostrophe S shows ownership. Like cats with apostrophe S would come before a word that's owned by the cat. For example, the cat's paw was injured, something like that. So that's the use of that apostrophe. I want students to know that. Lesson 29, there are words called nouns. Nouns are persons, places, or things that can end with apostrophe S or ES, but they're pronounced the same. They mean something different, but they're pronounced the same. These type words end in either an S sound like boss, or they end in a Z sound like, fox would be a good example. And that's not a Z sound. I meant to say a X sound, X, fox, or a Z sound like in quiz. So there are actually three different types of endings of nouns that when an apostrophe S is added will sound the same as if an ES is added, but mean something different. So students, let's see if you can read these before I do, and then I'll make a couple more comments. Bosses, bosses. Foxes, foxes. Quizzes, quizzes. Buses, buses. Boxes, boxes. Okay, now, as I said, even though they sound the same, the meaning is different. Apostrophe S on boss means something belongs to the boss, like the boss's office. The office belongs to him, so we use apostrophe S. But if it's bosses with an ES, that means more than one boss. Like the three big bosses came to inspect our factory today. With foxes, apostrophe S, this means something belongs to the fox, like the fox's bushy tail. Fox's ES means there's more than one fox. We saw 3 foxes running across the field. So that explains how the words can be pronounced the same, but mean something different. And if you thought English was an easy language to learn, think again. Ask some people that come over here that have to learn English from the ground up, and they'll tell you English is not an easy language to learn. When I first went through this lesson, I said I pronounce these endings, apostrophe S endings, or ES, as is, like bosses, bosses, foxes, foxes. That's how I pronounce it. You may have a slightly different pronunciation, and that's fine. Just go with yours. That's what happens when we got different dialects. Okay, now that we've done the review, we're going to the new lesson, which is lesson 30, ending blends. And blends are two consonants, one right after another, in which the first one, the sound of the first one, kind of moves smoothly into the sound of the second one. So we call that a blend. The sounds kind of blend together. You can tell the individual sounds, but they move from the first one smoothly into the second one. All right, so here are these words: hand, sand, band. And of course the blend is ND, nd, hand. Then we have end, send, lend. Again, the ending is the ND blend. Second line, milk and silk. We have the lk blend ending in milk. And then we have bond, fond, and pond. And the ending blend goes back to the ND we had from the first line. Then we've got must, dust, bust. The ending blend, of course, is st, st. Then we've got lamp, limp, lump. And the ending blend is mp, lamp. Last line, sent, bent. Ending blend, nt, nt, sent. And then we've got mint and hint. Again, the ending blend is nt. And then we have elk. An elk is an animal much like a moose. And teachers, you could show the student a picture of an elk from the computer. Young students may have questions about other words here. Older students might as well. I would not spend more than 5 minutes on defining the meaning of the words. It's more important to just move along more quickly. Students, when they get more independent in their reading, get more practice, they're going to be exposed to these words again. They'll learn the meaning. It'll just be a process that will happen. Okay, teachers, in just a moment, I want you to press pause, have the students read these words to you. And again, you can help them out by sounding them out left to right. And also, you can use the print and say method to help them even more. Press pause. Now we're going to have a spelling test on these words. I would recommend picking out 5 words. You can pick out your own. You don't have to use mine, but I suggest hand, milk, pond, must, and scent. You can throw in elk or an extra ending blend. But it's up to you. I would just not do all of them. It just takes too long. Okay, press pause and give the student a spelling test. Now we're going to the true and false. And if you're a first-time teacher, here's the way the true and false works. The student reads the true and false sentence silently first and tells you whether it's true or false, whether it's possible or it's not possible. Then the student, and you make no comment, then the student reads the sentence out loud and gives you their final true and false answer and tells you why. And at that point, you might have a little conversation with the student to point some things out as needed. So go ahead and press pause, have the students do that for you. All right, my answers. Number 1, the yells must end fast when Dad is home. Now, I can think of a scenario where this could be true. The kids are at home by themselves for a little bit. Mom isn't there, and Dad maybe ran to the store or something, and they see him coming up the sidewalk, and they're having a big fuss or making a whole lot of noise over something, and they figure it's a good idea, if they don't want to get in trouble, to end all that yelling fast before Dad comes in the house. So I think it could be true. Other students may have reasons that they give you that it wouldn't be true. And if they come up with a well thought out logical reason, well thought out in quotes now, for younger students especially, give them credit. Number 2, a big elk licks milk. Now, this is possible, but it's highly unlikely. So it could go either way, because an elk would have to be fed milk at a zoo or come into someone's yard and find a bowl of milk or something like that. I mean, it would just be highly unlikely. So here again, true or false, depending on how the student explains it. Number 3, Quinn is fond of red mints. Now, first of all, the student has to know that red mints is possible, and some students may not know that. For example, peppermint mints, which have usually white and red mixed, they're called mints. And if they have lots of red, which is the peppermint, then, you could say it's true. Also, chocolate mints could have food coloring that makes the chocolate have a reddish color, and that is possible. But younger students may not be, familiar with that, and they would put false for that. So I could understand their answer. Number 4, Gus must dust the rust off a duck when it quacks. Now, this is just too silly to be true. It's too silly on so many fronts that we wouldn't even consider another answer on that, I don't think. Okay, the next lesson that we're going to have is lesson 31, and the lesson is going to be on beginning blends. Beginning blends are a little more difficult because the student is faced with dealing with the blend right away, instead of getting into the pronunciation of the word and then, hopefully kind of just flowing right into the flow of the blend. They got to start out with dealing with the blend. It's a little harder. So we'll see how the students deal with that. But we're going to be, instead of doing a word like lip, we're going to do a word like flip and use a blend. Instead of the word an, we'll be doing a word like plan with a blend at the beginning. Instead of the word us, we might be doing plus. So we'll have fun in lesson 31. See you there.